Call to order the St. Joseph City Council meeting of Monday, December 20th. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item 2, public comments. Anyone wishing to address the city? Councilors, staff, please step to the podium. Item 3, approval of the agenda.
Second.
Motion and second to approve the agenda. Any changes or anything?
Yeah, there's one addition, 4G, to accept the resignation of Sergeant Dan Magard.
Okay. Motion and second approving the agenda. We're including 4G resignation. All those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 4, consent agenda. Second, motion and second on the consent agenda. I do want to mention 4G. We do recognize and appreciate the time served by Dan Magard and the dedication to his community. You know, I for one have gotten known Dan over the time, and I'm grateful and recognize the commitment Dan has made to St. Joe. And rarely do we not accept, but we accept with regrets in this case. Dan's been a wonderful asset to our community, and we want to recognize him for that. Motion and second on consent agenda. All those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 5, public hearing for the ADA transportation. Or, sorry, ADA transition, transportation.
Yes. Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. For your consideration this evening is adoption of the ADA transition plan. So what is the purpose of this plan? Really, the purpose is to be in conformance to Title II of ADA law, which does require government units to do a self-evaluation and have transition plans. The transition plan does designate a ADA coordinator, develops a process on how concerns are resolved and addressed, also has a self-evaluation and assessment, and like any document, it's an active document and updated as needed. So the self-evaluation and assessment, within the transition plan, we have information there that discusses and talks about how existing facilities will be continued to be assessed as ADA law changes. Any new or remodeled facilities that the city owns will need to adhere to the latest ADA regulations. And then also public infrastructure, like your sidewalks, trails, ped ramps, are, as street construction occurs, those are replaced in accordance to the ADA law. And also those follow the capital improvement plan. Staff also looks for grant opportunities to upgrade those infrastructure as we are able to. So part of this plan is public input. So staff did reach out to various organizations and get feedback regarding the ADA transition plan. And we also have the public hearing tonight. So we are very thankful for the feedback that we did get from some of the organizations. So this evening, what we'd be looking at is conducting the public hearing on the ADA transition plan, and then consider adoption of the resolution 2021-073, which officially adopts the ADA transition plan. So I'd be happy to answer questions should the council have any. Otherwise, we look to open up that public hearing.
Anything, councilors? That being said, we'll open up the public hearing, a portion of the ADA transition plan. Anybody wishing to speak towards that, please come to the podium. Name and address. Seeing no one come forward, we're going to close the public hearing and look for adoption.
I'll move to approve the ADA transition plan for resolution 2021-73.
Motion and second, resolution 2020-73, adopting the ADA transition plan. Questions or comments?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So Nate, do we ever get, like, as the city comments from other citizens that would ask about ADA accessibility when it's not city property? Like in the last few years, there's been letters to the editor and the news leaders about certain businesses that don't have access for wheelchairs or whatever. Do those calls ever come into the city saying, why doesn't so-and-so business have better access?
Yes, so we have gotten those questions in the
Yeah.
year that I've been here. So since it's a public, or since it's a private business, we can't force that private business to enhance their entrances. We do our best to work with them though and try to encourage that to happen, but it's out of the city's jurisdiction. This would, yeah.
As I imagine it would be, but I think there are some businesses that could be potentially at risk to some of these trolling lawyers that wanna, make a stink out of something, so.
Yeah, so one opportunity that the city does have the ability to do is, like for instance, when the Hudson and Co. building
Mhm.
got remodeled and new doors put in that, there was some improvements made to that entrance as part of the permit process.
With this, are we gonna be able to open up any kind of more grants then and being able to take this on? To
Potentially,
help private owners?
not for private.
Okay.
No, yeah, this is just public right away.
Okay.
Yeah, but having a plan positions the city to not only to be in adherence to all the ADA, but then also if grant opportunities do arise, we have a plan that is identifying the
And assisting.
ADA stuff.
Okay.
Yep.
Teresa, correct me if I'm wrong, but once a building permit is pulled, then the ADA requirement comes into effect. That's when, for private businesses. I believe I'm correct on that.
Definitely with new construction. Now Nate used the example of Hudson and Company in regards to their renovation. And so there wasn't, we were able to work with them in regards to that entrance.
Well, I'm just saying, in the past, I know when there's been a big permit pulled or whatever, that, it's required to, just to do business, to have an ADA compliant, such as entrances and so forth.
It depends
I
on
think
the
so.
scope and the permit that's
Yeah, I
pulled.
don't
If
think
it's
so.
just like a roofing permit,
Yeah.
we can't, but if it's like an entrance, a door, replacement of that, we can potentially look at those things.
So what you're saying moving forward, this is gonna definitely aid in having that business when they are getting permitted to be able to conversate about that.
That exists today, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, it already
Right,
exists.
yeah.
There's a
Okay.
line, and this applies maybe more so to the city, but there's some parallels on the private side in terms of, as Nate was describing, whether it's a maintenance activity or a minor repair versus a reconstruct. So in the case of public works or city infrastructure, when we're doing a maintenance improvement, so if public works is seal coating a street or crack filling, those are considered maintenance activities. When we're proposing a reconstruction of a street, that's considered a significant repair. So that's what would trigger, at least on the city side, public improvements to ped ramps. So we'll talk a little bit more under the 2022 project, but you'll see that there are similarities when it comes to public works.
Motion and second on the ADA transition plan. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Building materials, item 6, right?
Yes, so for the council's consideration, Bad Habit Brewery is going through site plan review right now. As part of that, we are looking at some building material requirements. So they're gonna be doing an expansion here within your B1 zoning district, which is your downtown zoning district. We do have requirements that allude to no more than 15% of the wall area can be pre-finished architectural metal. So Bad Habit is proposing to have 61% architectural metal, which would be on the south side of their addition. So the Planning Commission did review this and did recommend in approval of the building material allowance, and that happened at the December 13th meeting. In your packets, you have a couple different documents related to the site plan, which shows the addition here on the south side of the building. And then also the graphics that are tied to the expansion project. So if you see on the south side of, which would be where that patio area is, that would be the area that would be as part of the request for the increase in architectural metal. So the action that we're asking of the council is a motion on the applicant's request to allow more than 15% architectural metal. Another tidbit for this project too, back when Bad Habit had purchased the old City Hall building in 2017, 2018, they also went through the same request with architectural metal. So we do have the applicant here this evening along with a contractor, and I think they do have a sample of the material too if the council wants to see that. Other than that, questions?
To approve under Planning Commission advisory to approve this request.
And second,
Motion and second to approve the, what does this say? Well, exceed the maximum percentage of pre-finished architecture metal. Questions? Yeah.
Yeah, it's not sheet metal, correct?
No.
Because, yeah, I would like to see it, obviously, too. But other question, is there any other businesses downtown that have more than 15% besides Bad Habit?
Oh, I don't think so.
I do not believe
Yeah.
so, but I'm not 100% on that.
Okay.
Everything else is brick and stuff. Yeah, I don't think so.
Seen it?
Is,
Yeah, please.
So that is a Edco board and batten siding. It's gonna be a vertical style.
oh, this won't do. No.
It's brown.
no,
Okay. I just check.
Is it west, south and west?
It will be the south and the west elevation.
Okay, yeah.
How much, the first time you said they asked for the same request, what was it over the 15% the first time?
I don't recall the exact percentage, to be honest. I think it was pretty, I don't know, maybe, Aaron, do you remember?
No, I mean, we kept most of the grant that was on there just to break up the metal,
Mhm.
Yeah.
so I don't remember what it was. It would be close to half.
Okay.
Probably.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment.
So you took off the granite on the south side, right? Are you planning to reuse that?
Anybody wants it.
Well, I just thought, you know, based on the sculpture of the, you know, what the building was, you know, okay.
I use some on the inside.
Okay, no big deal. Further questions, comments, motion? Yeah, okay.
So by approving this for Bad Habit, we're not changing the ordinance, it's just, this is a one-off.
Yeah, one off.
Okay. No other questions?
I think it's gonna be more aesthetically pleasing.
Well, the renderings look good.
We like granite. Motion and second to exceed the maximum percentage of pre-finished architectural metal. Any other questions? All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion does carry. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Nate. Let's see, that was, okay, 7. AEDs, we're back here.
Yeah, so as you recall, Jill Vogel with Advocates for Health at your November meeting had requested that the city, just to back up, it was a couple of years ago, the city council approved up to 9 AED monitoring, maintenance, and taking that on. And at your meeting in November, Joel had asked the council to take on additional. And one of the things, so the council did not approve to take on those additional. However, after the meeting, I was contacted by Joe Vogel, who shared that he was mistaken in one of the locations of one of those and said that one of them is indeed in Kleinfelter Park. And from what staff can see, is it appears it is in Kleinfelter Park or very near the shared property line. So the request this evening is for the council to accept the one that appears to be in Kleinfelter Park, and that we would take on the maintenance cost of that.
Questions? How did it get constructed in Kleinfelter Park?
I don't have an answer for that. Staff was not aware until recently.
So they just built it, and now we're forced to pay because they built it on our property, versus having them move it to their property.
So, have you seen it over there?
Yeah,
It does, I mean, does it,
it's right on the line.
that's what I was gonna
Actually,
say,
right
is it
on
on
the
the line, right by that,
Yep.
electrical box?
Again, I don't know which one of you guys wants to jump in here. It's right on the line. It could
Yeah,
be-
the only thing I can think of, sir, is, it was a power source, right?
Yep.
It needs a power source, and right now there is zero power inside
Yep.
of Kleinfelter, so, and that's the only assumption I
So
can
they
make as to the location where it's at.
Without the city's knowledge of it because they thought it was private?
Private.
Yeah. They need a power
But
source.
that pole was theirs or ours?
Theirs.
The power pole,
Yeah.
belongs to the energy company.
But it's billed back to the resident.
Correct.
Yeah,
So
it's the
that would be
resident.
private.
Yeah. Again, there's some holes in this.
Yeah.
Just because they build it on public land doesn't mean we get to own it. If two neighbors were to come in conflict with a fence, well, I built it on your property, you wanna maintain it now? I mean, there's just something wrong with this.
Kinda seems like it just slipped under the radar.
Well, we
I
could
thought
have
it
them,
would.
we could have them move it 3 feet, right? I mean, that's viable, they just have to take the post up and put it back down on their property.
But backing up for a minute, how did the other 8 or 9 that we already are responsible for, how did those get approved and installed?
We picked out the locations and everything.
I think the
All in
council-
one shot?
I think he came here with a map on where he wanted to put them. He said, here, we want one at the firehouse, we want one here at the city,
Okay.
and we said, sure, we'll do it.
Most of them are in public buildings
Right, yeah.
or.
This one, I had no idea until it went up, that it was there. And so he negotiated with the owner of all these other 5 or 6 locations, we wanna put one on your property.
But the idea of having one in Kleinfelter is not a bad idea.
No, I don't disagree with the bad idea.
You disagree with the process.
I disagree with the process in that if this was a normal process in processing, we'd either have them move that pole or dismantle it, like a cease and desist.
And I
And-
like the idea of moving it onto our property, right? Or we.
Well, we
can
don't have a
move it.
power source. Then we'd have to use then they wouldn't work, because we don't have power.
Oh, okay.
They put it there because there's electric at that residence. There's no electric in Kleinfelter. So I'm not inclined to move it on public ground and use their electrical source.
Right, no, I get it.
And so I'm inclined to say move it on private property. If this were 2 neighbors having a conflict, it'd be a civil dispute and we'd go back and forth on who owns the what on whose land. I don't wanna survey it. I don't really wanna survey it.
No, we're not gonna.
They gotta move it, 4 feet to the west.
And that's the only way you could do is verify by a survey.
I'm not gonna pay for a survey.
Well, exactly.
Again, I'm not sure they actually went through you would have to look, if they went through the permitting process to put it in. I mean, that's what would have triggered a survey, or where the lot line was.
Or can we say, if you want us, then you do the survey, or otherwise move it onto private property?
No, I still think even if we
Well,
do the survey.
It has to be
we're still
on the
not
private
allowed.
property in order to operate.
Yeah, I still think
We don't have power there.
even if we do a survey, the electrical is still theirs. And, again, I'm not sure how that works with,
Right.
I mean, I don't.
That's-
I'm inclined to push it back and say they have to move it in the spring. I know that's a terrible idea, but, cause I like a AED out there. At the same time, if they beat up the process to do it, there's,
What's the point of having process.
What's that important to have process, and, you know, if it's 3 feet to the west or where it's at, it's still gonna serve its purpose.
Is this one of the last ones? Is this a recent AED?
Oh, I have no
Ones that
idea,
they've
it's
added.
one
I
of the
think this
last.
was
They've added it
I
later.
thought this was the first session.
No,
No,
It wasn't, it was
they
second.
added it. yeah,
these are the ones, that
second go
these are the
around.
ones that he talked to private industry and business and people to put it on their property.
Yeah, the only thing we saw was the initial map of where
Was
he
it
wanted them,
initial 8?
and then we had, a few of them locations were on our property.
Well, then I think it just goes back to what we had said when he was here, is that if that's private property, then that's their responsibility.
Could we accept donation for the amount or something like that?
You can, and then you're accepting the responsibility of maintaining it.
Yeah.
Are we really? Yeah, yeah, I'm not eager to do that right now. Well, I just,
Oh, I agree.
I just don't understand how it got there without, you know, violating some kind of process and knowing where it's gonna be put up, like a fence or like a sign or something.
Well, like you had said before, if this is private property, then the private property takes care of that process.
And they have the choice of moving it or taking it down, is
Well,
what
the
I see.
property owner must have had some say in,
Yeah, absolutely. I think Joel must have had some conversation with that property owner to say, can we put it here, kind of thing. I don't know. Yeah, Teresa.
I was gonna say, I would imagine that is the case, is when he was at the meeting, he had indicated it was on private property.
Okay,
And then he said he called you because he said he wasn't sure now?
He had called after that meeting and said that it was now on Kleinfelter, in Kleinfelter Park.
okay. Bob, what was your motion?
my motion was to have AED monitoring and maintenance advocates for health assume the responsibility of that AED and move it in the spring one way or the other, whether, you know, maybe the city will have power in Kleinfelter Park by spring, I don't know,
I don't think so.
you know.
Maybe someday, right?
Someday.
Yeah, but not that I'm aware of now, but,
Okay.
I mean, look, they're either gonna have to move it or just accept the responsibility of it.
Okay.
I second.
Motion and second, so the pushback is to, let this group take responsibility of it and/or move it back to private property. I don't know if is it the same motion, cause, you know, they can they accept responsibility with it being on public property?
Lori, I'm gonna let Lori
don't
answer
know
that
about-
question.
It's kind of a slippery
It showed
slope.
up on public property without the city's knowledge, so it seems like it was placed there
Inappropriately,
inappropriately, so I think they would have to take responsibility for that as well.
so they'd have to move it, is what you're saying. Yeah, so
Correct.
the motion is really to move it, and take it,
Yeah.
take responsibility of, okay. Just so I'm clear. So motion and second, move this AED off of public property onto private property. And this group or that homeowner will then take, responsibility for maintenance and upkeep. Further questions or comments? Any concerns? All
Is
those.
there any stats on if any of them are being used or if anything's going on with them, you know, anything? Just curious.
I have not heard that they have been used. Ryan, are you aware?
Yeah, there's probably stats at Stearns County, but I don't know of
Right.
any.
No, I'm not aware of any, in St. Joe that have been used at this time.
Yeah. Stearns County is tracking that, but I don't think out here we've used it.
The
Motion-
ones that the fire department owns obviously get
Are
used.
we, since we're paying for the maintenance of it, are you able to get those reports and, you know, get that at a by, you know, every 6 months or whatever to see?
Well, I don't
I
know
mean,
what-
since we're paying for the maintenance and everything of them, we should be able to see how you know.
Yeah, I can reach out.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd
It
be nice
might-
just
That might be, a-
out of curiosity to know that.
it might be a Dwight question, because it's the sheriff's department that
Okay.
monitors it. I don't- Motion and second, moving it back to private land, and advocates for health will maintain it. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion does carry. All right, item 8, fundraising consultant.
So, at your meeting in November, the council agreed to move forward with Heartsick fundraising consultant Worldwide, contingent on a review of a contract and approval of that contract. And that was after a recommendation from, so you had 4 that submitted proposals in response to our RFP that we issued, and the council members in attendance, as well as the community center committee, discussed it and weighed in, and that was their recommendation. So I've been working with Hartsook, and they have provided a contract. There was one that was provided in your packet last Friday, along with comments and recommendations from our city attorney. They have since revised the contract, which is in front of you this evening. I apologize for the last minute updated proposal, but essentially they have, and Sue, our attorney, has reviewed the updated document, and she has verified that they have addressed all of her recommendations. So before you this evening is to consider approving that contract. I would ask that if you do, you'll notice that the contract is for 24 months to start January 1 and to go until December 31st of 2023. I would ask that you allow me to work with Sue in regards to adding language that when the established goal is achieved, or December 31st, 2023, whichever comes first. So for example, once we establish what that goal is, whether it's 4 million or 6 million, if we reach that goal before December 31st of 2023, I would want this contract to end, so we're not spending that money that we don't need to spend.
Right, so if we break ground in September 2023, we should all have all the funds. Why pay them 3 more months?
Correct.
What's the cost of this 24-month contract?
It's 17,500 a month.
What's that?
Overall, was it 420,000?
620?
600
So-
Nope,
grand.
it's changed, right?
Yeah, so with the revised document, at 24 months, it would be a total of 420,000.
So
With the revised
17,500
document.
a month.
The revised contract is 400 and what thousand?
420,000.
Okay, and, what's the downside of, let's say they raise $5 in this 24-month period, I mean hypothetical here. So do we still pay the 430 whatever $1,000?
Well, it looks like
We
we
would
can,
be in contract to pay them, yes.
So is there incentive clause to say if you must raise a certain amount of money in the contract? I admit it, I have not read the complete contract. Is there an incentive in there to say you must perform at a certain amount?
I think there's guidelines of fundraising consultants that does not permit them to do that.
Okay.
Whether it's Hartsook or Crescendo or any other ones we saw, based on what I saw, is that they can't be tying their compensation to how much is raised.
Okay,
looks like there's a termination clause in there too, at least in 60 days, but.
But 420 is more palatable than 600, so this just happened today.
Yes,
We went from 36 months down to 24.
yes, that was the request that they needed to reduce the contract and their expenses, yes. Mhm.
And I did do the math on the other organization that, we looked at and divided by 24, and, we're talking $16,000 to $17,000 a month out of the get-go.
Yep.
Is coming out of the budget.
17,500 a month.
And that's whether you raise 1 million or 8 million.
Are we taking this out of what fund?
All of them had said that this is rolled into their capital campaign. Their fees will be structured in there, so it comes out of those funds.
Yeah, from what I remember, isn't it they also try to raise that money that we pay them too?
Correct.
Pretty much,
And all 4 had indicated that.
yeah.
Is that what you were asking?
No.
He was asking if we have to cut
Yeah.
a check in January,
Yeah.
what account is it coming out of? Right?
So initially, excuse me, initially, we would have it come out of the Fund 390 and not tie up the sales tax money for the capital campaign. But as the capital campaign rolls on, we can reimburse that fund back once we receive some of those pledges.
How much is
But
in,
in the end, the capital campaign will pay for the fundraising
Right.
activity.
how much is in 390?
Almost $1 million.
Okay.
Yes, John?
I'm just waiting.
Oh, thought you wanted to say something.
It's just on in case I want to. Well, I move to approve it, but pending, kind of what Therese said is, it's either 24 months or if they've raised the money prior to that
And also
contract.
what did you say on the?
Contingent upon meeting
Yeah.
with the city attorney and recommendations and approval.
One thing we haven't set though is the amount that we want raised. So,
Yep.
Right, that's the
Yep, we have to establish that goal.
prior to January 1.
Good luck with that.
Huh?
Good luck with that. Agree, the biggest, right now, before we, regardless of the contracts and everything else, the biggest thing is we have to determine quickly how much money we need to, how much money we're gonna spend, and what that buys us from a building perspective. Second, I'll second the approval to move forward with Heartsick Fundraising Council, provided the language is satisfactory. Motion and second on the table. Heartsick Fundraising. Questions, comments, and concerns?
Questions?
Yeah.
When are we gonna set the fundraising goal?
January 17th?
I mean, that should be in there before the contract is even signed.
January 17th.
And what's the criteria going to be to set that goal with?
Right.
How are we gonna come up with that?
Yeah, so I'm suggesting that I would be able to work with Sue in regards to, do we actually have to have that number? You're right, I mean, typically you would want that in the contract, I would agree.
Right,
So
'cause
Sue
then,
might
you
come
know,
back
If they
saying,
can raise that in 12 months, we can
Right.
terminate that contract and save a couple $100,000.
Right.
So
Right.
let's have Sue
yeah,
delineate whether we need that specific number, what we're
Yes.
trying to raise or not, and by a specific time. And
And then-
whether that
Yes.
has to be in the contract.
because right now, the goals have been thrown out,
Yeah.
4 million, 6 million, and 8 million. And truthfully, you're right, we haven't established what is that number, what's feasible, realistic.
Right, I'm sure the architects wanna know what kind of number they're looking at too,
Yeah.
as far as design.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, get all that stuff in,
Yep,
pretty
totally agree.
close here to
I
button
Let's-
it
think
up.
part of the
let's,
capital campaign is also gonna help us determine that. We have the work that was done a couple years ago,
Yep.
but,
Mm-hmm.
I think the preliminary, activities that Heartsook would be doing is also helping us narrow down what that number
I think
should
it's,
be.
Yeah, the last number was a $12 million project, and that was, what, 4 or 5 years ago,
Mhm.
so, you know, in inflation and everything else, you know,
Right.
you're probably looking at, I don't know, 16 million
13 million.
for the same, you know, I don't know.
Right,
Yeah, there are a lot of moving pieces. Motion and second to, I'm off one, aren't they? Motion and second to move forward with Heartsick Consulting, fundraising consulting. Other questions or concerns?
With the contingency
Yeah.
of,
Contingency in that,
Contingency,
and
yeah.
let's,
just wanna make sure.
yeah, let's bring Sue back into the dollar amount and see what, if
There'll be a
if
final
anybody needs it.
contract coming before the council to look at though too, right, before we actually sign the contract.
This is
Well-
for all practical purpose, oh, excuse me.
This
This
is, except for, oh, sorry.
Except for, I mean, it has missing things in it.
For all practical purposes, this is the final contract, but I'm asking the council to allow me to work with Sue in regards to establishing, putting language in establishing that goal. You know, what that may be, but if there's a desire to bring it back, we can do that as well.
Well, I'd like to see the full, I mean,
But-
the full contract, not the, you know,
This is the full contract except for
right,
language.
except for there's, you know, the goals and where they're going with it.
There wouldn't be much added to this.
But there'll be something added to this that'll change the whole scope of it.
No,
Or not
they're just,
much, in my opinion.
again, we're only changing the language to to stop the contract after a certain number of months, provided there's no more work to do. And that's the language. It doesn't change the contract at all at this point. Now, whether Sue says we should put physical dollars in there, which I don't think she will, but whether she says it or not, then that, yes, that would change the contract, and then Hartsick will probably wanna get back on, and we'll have to look at it again. But to this point, all we're adding is we can eliminate the contract after a certain number of months and not pay beyond that.
So on page 20, under the fee structure, that
Yeah.
first sentence.
So as it stands right now, no matter what, it would never go beyond December 31st of 2023. And I'm asking the council to allow it to possibly be shortened,
Yeah.
essentially, and work with Sue on language to allow us to do that.
But isn't Harstook gonna wanna know what type of funds they gotta raise before they sign it?
Yeah, but if it's,
I guess that, we're gonna say raise it all you can, and if they,
You know,
if they
if
don't
we
raise
say-
that,
if we say 4 and they raise it in 12 months, well then, contract's done. If we say 6, it takes them 18. If we say 8, it takes them 24. We're not gonna go on.
You know, we as a council are gonna have to say, well, we need, let's say $10 million in order to build this, and we got 4 from the state. And then whatever residuals we got left over after that, we're gonna have to show the architects what we're planning on building. You know, I mean, Harstook could, you know, raise 2 million, and we need 10. And we're planning on, you know, a certain amount of money for the building.
That's what we're gonna be going through in the meeting in January. So
Right.
that's what we're gonna nail down.
I'm just saying, before we
this,
sign
this
it, we
put,
nail that down.
this puts Hartsick on task to start working for us,
Right away.
regardless of what the number is.
Yeah, and Hartsick's gonna help us determine that number.
Correct.
Motion and second approving Hartsick fundraising with the additions Teresa has mentioned. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Hey,
Motion carries. Item 9, the master engineering report.
Good evening. So at your meeting in November, the council had ordered in the preparation of a feasibility report for what we have been calling the 2022 street improvements. I had distributed a hard copy to you this evening for your reading afterwards. But this evening, Bill will be walking through what we'll call the feasibility report highlights. The council may recall in one of our work sessions, we've talked about one of the documents that is the pavement maintenance plan that the city maintains. This is kind of a roadmap in terms of projects involving street maintenance, primarily overlays, crack sealing, and seal coat activities. So it's a timeline, if you would, for the next 6 to 7 years of potential improvement. So that forms the basis or the backdrop for the 2022 improvements. And then with that, Bill will walk through the highlights, project areas, and we'll talk about our next steps.
Good evening. So like Randy said, my name is Bill. This is a presentation for the 2022 street improvements. As you can see on the list, let's actually just jump right into the image. It might be a little easier to see where we're talking in town. So up on the far top left, we're looking at First Avenue Northwest. That's from Dade Street all the way to the north end. And then kind of the bottom left there, we're talking about Ellie Court, and that would just be the bulb of the cul-de-sac, so not actually the stem of the cul-de-sac. And then in the Graceview area, it is Callaway Street, 4th Avenue, Faith Lane, Graceview Drive, and Graceview Loop. And then, actually, I might be able to see my mouse. Here we go. And then kind of in the middle, on the right side here, we have 17th Avenue and 18th Avenue, and then Baker Street East. And then on the far right-hand side here, we have an intersection of Pearl Drive, Batzer Drive, and 304th Street. For a majority of these streets, you've seen this in the past on other presentations that we've given. For the majority of this area, we're actually going to be falling in the overlay category for the street rehabilitation, based on the age of the pavement and also the condition of the roadways. There are 2 areas that are going to fall within the reclaim and pave. I'll touch on that in a little bit here. Going into the Graceview Estates neighborhood, so 4th Avenue, Graceview Loop, Graceview Drive, and Faith Lane that you can see on the road here, those are all proposed to be edge mill and overlay. And then also Callaway Street is also proposed to be edge mill and overlay. One other aspect of these projects, kind of going off of what Nate presented earlier with the ADA transition plan, is we will be doing these sidewalk improvements for ADA transition and improvements for any of the ped ramps that abut these roadways. Like Randy mentioned, a mill and overlay or even a reclaim and pave do fall into the category of having to reconstruct the ped ramps that are adjacent to the project. So for one example, over here on College Avenue, my mouse isn't showing up now. Over on College Avenue and Callaway Street, we are proposed to reconstruct those ped ramps at that location. Also same on Callaway Street over on 4th as well. So there's other areas throughout the project that will be having ped ramp reconstruction as well. So I just wanted to make sure that was noted, that that is also included for portions of this project. So Ellie Court then is the last area in the Graceview Estates neighborhood. And this is one that is proposed to be reclaimed and paved. So again, it'll just be the bulb of the cul-de-sac, so it will not be the full length. I'll show you a picture here in a little bit that the bulb area has deteriorated quite a bit.
And I'll pause maybe there for just a moment. The cul-de-sac by itself is a bit of an anomaly. You typically wouldn't see us recommending just the cul-de-sac. So there's a bit of an explanation for this. The pavement inside the cul-de-sac is deteriorating rapidly to the point that between staff and Public Works, we don't believe it will last till 2025. So when you look at the pavement maintenance plan, the rest of Ellie Court was guided for an overlay in 2025. And so in consultation with Ryan, we needed to make the decision of, do we do the cul-de-sac now in 2022, or do we think we can stretch it out to 2025? And the conclusion was we couldn't wait. So we drew a line, that coincided with the cul-de-sac as well as the property line, so that when we come back in 2025 and do most of Graceview 2, we'll be matching at the point on the south side of that purple. Similarly, there'll be another slide here. You'll see the reference to Pearl Drive and 304th Street up in the Industrial Park East is a similar instance. The intersection itself is deteriorating, and we don't believe it can last much longer, so we've included it as part of this project.
I can just jump
So,
ahead and we'll go
Bill
back.
and
Yes.
Randy, I got a question on Callaway. Could we go back to Callaway?
Yeah.
So if we start building the community center 18 months from now, or whenever that might happen, I just think, why would we do an overlay next year that might bump into the construction equipment, or after putting down a beautiful new road, then we have 2023, all kinds of heavy equipment coming in there and beating the crap out of it. So to me, it just doesn't make sense that we would put a new road in there knowing that we have a big project coming up.
So part of the strategy, at least with an overlay, is to maintain what you have. So in this case, we're not proposing to reconstruct or even take the existing layers. We're proposing to add a new layer to the existing street. You'll hear us talk repeatedly when we talk about overlays. We don't overlay streets when they're riddled with potholes or in a deteriorated state. The goal of the overlay is to get that life from a 20-year street design to a 30-year. So the question that we have to ask ourselves is the street in a more robust condition with that extra layer to withstand the beating of construction traffic with that third layer on, or with two? So I acknowledge what you're saying, Kevin, in terms of it's subject to maybe more abuse, but having that third layer on is providing some additional strength and robustness.
But your study was only done based on regular traffic.
Well,
You didn't factor in, we're gonna have 12 to 18 months of heavy, or 12 months of heavy equipment coming through.
so every one of our streets, at least if they've been designed, say in the 1990s to now, are designed either a 7 or a 9 ton capacity. So by nature of that design, they can withstand a certain amount of heavy construction traffic. This building is a case in point. It withstood the traffic at Callaway, and it withstood the traffic on First. So it's when it goes from normal construction traffic or normal traffic to something that's excessive, where we might run into a problem. But by design, they can withstand, a 9-ton traffic load, for example.
How much is 9 ton? Is that a cement truck?
Yes. Our garbage trucks, our buses, delivery vehicles, so, again, picture the normal traffic you see on our roads today, withstand that level of traffic. So we could still be looking at several hundred heavy commercial vehicle trips per day on Callaway Street, for example. But it's a fair. Correct, correct.
Pretty bad? Could we hold off a couple of years so that we can make everything look pretty after?
You certainly can. So that's the whole point of us timing these now, is that we don't want the road to get to a state of disrepair. And sometimes I know that's a difficult message to convey to the public, because they look out and they say, well, there's nothing wrong with my street.
Right.
The point is we're trying to prolong it.
And I'm not pushing back on that idea.
Right.
I get the idea of regular street maintenance. What I'm saying here is that we're gonna have a lot going on this street.
Yes.
So why put something new on there if it gets beat up?
Well, and
over
then
12 to
put it
18
on
months?
our docket right after we build, so then everything looks
Right.
good.
Kind of be frosting on the cake to redo Callaway after the community center is built.
Very, very, point well taken. So, that is
I'm
the
just
purpose of going through this exercise, is if the council would desire to delay Callaway Street, it's easy for us to remove it.
But then again, if we don't do nothing, and hypothetically, all that construction goes on there and it beats the hell out of Galloway Street, and then instead of an overlay, it's gonna be a reconstruct. So you're talking
Well,
more dollars.
that's a new enough street.
It's
At
a
worst,
gamble
maybe
one way or the other.
it's a mill. We mill out the 2 layers in the worst case, but
Okay.
we're not at a point where it would be a reconstruct, in my opinion. But maybe it's a little bit more than an overlay.
So-
Things happen.
We can continue on with the rest of the conversation, but I'd like to kind of take that piece and just, let's
Bookmark that.
reconsider it,
Bookmark it.
talk about it in the future, because we don't have to decide right now.
You don't have to decide exactly right now.
You do. You have
But we
that's
do.
part of the proposal tonight,
Yup.
on what we're really gonna do
Okay.
in
Well, then
2022.
we'll stay here till 9 o'clock.
No,
Meeting adjourned.
So, I hear you kinda saying, so you could hold off, and if you do hold off, you might have to do one step more on top of what we're
possibly.
doing. And it's all up in the air, right?
Yes.
It's like saying, I'd like to do my oil change every 3,000 miles to get the most out of my car, but I could go 5,000 if I'd like.
and likely not have any
Exactly. So,
consequences for it.
that's kinda how I see it, right?
Yeah.
We could go every 3,000 and change our oil, right? Or chance it can go every 5,000 and still not have something happen.
No.
What I think,
No,
what-
this is like, you're gonna change it every 3,000, then you wanna take your truck and drive it to Alaska and back.
Okay,
Right.
okay, guys.
well,
And
All right, let's, okay,
sure.
let's not,
I would say it like this.
Thanks,
Can we
Kelly. Let's,
propose Callaway until, to revisit this within, what, we're saying 2 years from the community center? So,
2023 September
2023,
2 years?
2024.
2 years?
to break,
2 years.
2024.
so then 2024 complete.
Let's,
Tell you what, let's park
Yeah,
that
let's
conversation
park
for
it.
just a moment. We'll finish the
Thank you.
rest of the presentation and we'll come back.
you got 10 minutes.
Alright, I can talk quick, that's fine. Alright, well, we'll jump back into, I guess, the actual, what these roads are constructed of. So, Fourth Avenue, Graceview Drive, Graceview Loop, and Faith Lane were all constructed in 2002, so approximately 20 years old next year when we get into them. Fourth Avenue Southeast is a 36-foot wide urban section, while the rest are all 24-foot urban sections. They all consist of 4 inches of bituminous overlaying 6 inches of an aggregate base, which would be considered a light 9-ton design, kind of what Randy was going into earlier. Callaway Street, it was reconstructed in 2004, a 36-foot wide urban section. This is also 4 inches of bituminous on top of 7 inches of aggregate base, so a little more stout section. It is still considered a light 9-ton design. Ellie Court was also constructed in 2004, approximately 18 years old then next year. 36-foot wide urban section. Again, we're getting into the bulb of it though, so the 36 is actually just the stem portion of it. This is also considered a light 9-ton design with a 4 inches of bituminous overlaying 6 inches of aggregate base, and there's also a geotextile fabric underneath that one as well. Regular maintenance through the Grace View neighborhood was conducted back in 2009 and 2013 with crack seals, and 2011 and 2015 with aggregate seal coats. The proposed improvement, like we discussed for this area, is edge mill and overlay. So we'd be edge milling approximately the outer 6 feet up to the gutter pan, approximately 1 inch down by the gutter pan, and then overlaying it with an 1.5 inch layer of bituminous. ADA improvements, and then also on Ellie Court would be just a full depth reclaim and pave of just the cul-de-sac. Kind of looking at the proposed sections, then you can see the area in dark gray that will be proposed to be milled off to accommodate the extra thickness of the lift of asphalt. So there will be a little bit of a lip next to the curb and gutter, kind of right there. There's, my mouse isn't showing. Right next to the curb and gutter, you can see there'll be about a 1/4 to a 1/2 inch lip. That's fairly common with this practice. And then those areas actually all have curb and gutter. So the section below actually pertains to a different portion of the project that I'll touch on here.
So if you drove up into the Northland neighborhood this summer with this year's project, that's the same activity that was done this summer.
Yep.
So fairly common approach for us.
So then for Ellie Court, this is just showing the 8 inches of reclaimed material that will be salvaged and reshaped, and then paving 2 lifts of bituminous on top of that, consisting of 4 inches of bituminous total, and protecting the existing curb and gutter. Just some pictures of Ellie Court, Graceview Drive, and then, here's Ellie Court. As we kind of discussed, Ellie Court is pretty beaten up in the cul-de-sac area there.
What happened at Ellie Court? I mean, it's similar to
Similar age.
all the Graceview, Elena Court, Elena Lane and all that.
It could have been that day's production of mix. You know, it's hard to put your finger at because of the performance tests of if everything else has lasted.
Yeah.
But you can have a day's poor production.
Okay. Well, it's unusual.
So jumping into the next area of 17th Avenue Southeast, 18th Avenue Southeast, and Baker Street East. This is kind of right where we just did 18th Avenue also. We just did 18th Avenue right here this summer. So kind of going right next to that. The north portion, I guess let's start with Baker Street. It was reconstructed in 2002. It's a 30-foot rural section. It does have storm sewer actually along the sides of it also. It consists of 4 inches of bituminous on top of 8 inches of aggregate base, which is also considered a light 9-ton design. 17th Avenue Southeast, so from Baker Street North. So there's a couple of different, oh boy, it's not going, there we go. There's a couple different sections here. So from Baker Street North is one, and then from Baker Street South is another one with a little different structural section on the south in there too. So the north part, so north of Baker Street, was constructed back in 1999, so approximately 23 years old. It's a 32-foot wide rural section, and it consists of the original construction of 2.5 inches of bituminous on top of 6 inches of aggregate base. So this is considered one of the lighter roads at a 7-ton design. 17th Avenue south of Baker is constructed in 2003, so approximately 19 years old. It's a 32-foot wide urban section, so this does have curb and gutter on the south side, and it is consisted of 4 inches of bituminous on top of 6 inches of aggregate base. This area on the very south portion, kind of where you're rounding.
There's curb and gutter on what side?
On both sides, so just
On the
south.
south, yeah,
on
the
the
new
south.
part, okay.
Yep, on the newer
Okay,
part, so
just
south
checking.
of Baker Street, there's curb and gutter on 17th and
Okay,
18th here as
perfect.
well.
Should we put it in on 17?
Yes. I know my neighbors will not be happy with that, but, but it's, yeah, we're the only area.
Yep.
So one of the
So-
themes that you'll notice in at least these last couple slides, most of these roads are between 19 to 23 years old. So we're typically targeting an overlay close to that 20-year mark. Anywhere from 15 to 20-some years is kind of that opportunity that we're trying to capitalize on.
Yep. And then, so for, like I mentioned, the very south portion of 17th Avenue, so this is in the newer section with the curb and gutter, we get into some different soils on the south side there. So that is actually more of a stout section, including 18 inches of granular soils underneath the 4 inches and 6 inches of aggregate base with geotextile. So that is considered a 9-ton design as well. 18th Avenue, also constructed in 2003. It's a 36-foot wide urban section with 4 inches of bituminous on top of 6 inches aggregate base. Again, the south portion, just like 17th Avenue, is a little more stout section with 18 inches of select granular soils and geotextile. This is also considered a 9-ton design. Regular maintenance in the neighborhood has been conducted in 2009 and 2012 with crack seals, and then 2010 and 2015 with aggregate seal coats. The proposed improvements for this area are the edge mill, like I discussed previously, and then also some ADA improvements. One aspect with this, since the 17th Avenue is rural, as well as Baker Street, we will still be doing the edge mill along the edges just to make sure that we are able to tie into the driveways properly without raising the roadway at each driveway. That way we will not be creating drainage issues at the driveways for
And
that.
how much again?
It's about an
So-
inch and a half mil, and so
Yeah.
if we didn't do that, if you can imagine a new layer, inch and a half thick going on the whole pavement section, we'd end up having to reconstruct all of the driveways
Well,
because they'd
that's,
have to
okay,
come up.
so in front of mine, I'm sorry, because I am one there. Because of the movement of the post office and because it's on our side of the street, we have 2 potholes right in our driveway, right on the road, and that's more than an inch, so what do you do with that?
So where there may be a pothole, we would actually patch the pavement.
Okay.
So we'll construct a small bituminous patch as a repair and then overlay the whole
Okay.
thing.
And then in some areas where there might be a smaller pothole, not necessarily a pothole, maybe a little dip, where the mill goes across, it keeps a straight plane across it so it doesn't mill out in the dips or anything, the extra amount. It stays just across that. So in those areas where it might have a dip, it might not be a full inch mill out of that, it might only be a half inch. And then same with, just like up on the Graceview neighborhood for areas with curb and gutter, they'll be up to the gutter pan, approximately an inch deep, and then overlaying with an inch and a half, protecting the curb and gutter. Just some pictures. So this is of 17th Avenue Southeast, looking north of Baker. I believe this is looking north.
So are we gonna end up with curb and gutter on here?
No.
No, just gonna do the, okay,
Yeah.
all
We're,
right.
we're not, since
Not
this
at
is
this
a midlife
Got
improvement,
it,
if you
okay.
would, it is not a
When would that
reconstruction.
come to the table?
Well, ideally, 10 to
Many
15
years.
years from now.
Really?
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
and the motivation for that, bear in mind, is we're trying to get 35 years of life out of
I
the
get it.
street. So
I hear you.
if you reconstructed it prematurely, you wouldn't see
Yeah.
that full pavement life.
Okay, now you got a pretty picture on this side. Did you go to the other side?
I got some of, this is Baker Street then. And
That's
then,
funny.
oh, I guess I didn't put one in here, but yeah, I'm sorry, we did have other pictures of that area. Maybe next
Yeah, the
time I'll
nice
put them
little
all in there.
potholes in the front, yeah, okay.
So jumping up to the northwest side of town a little bit here for First Avenue Northwest, this is proposed to be an edge mill overlay as well. So same kind of construction activity as the rest of the area. First Avenue Northwest was reconstructed in 1998. It's a 36-foot wide urban section as well. It consists of 3 inches of bituminous and 4 inches of aggregate base. This is considered a 7-ton design. The regular maintenance was conducted in 2009 with crack seal and 2010 with a seal coat. Again, this is proposed to be an edge mill and overlay. Same section as shown previously. We got a couple of pictures here, so as you can tell, it's just cracks here and there. It's not in disrepair by any means, so it's a good candidate for the edge mill and overlay. And then jumping down to the last part
Can
of the
we
project.
go back,
Time out.
Yeah.
can we go back to first, wasn't there some work done in, I'm calling it the trail, what's a better way of saying trailer court?
Manufactured
It wasn't
home.
on First, it was on,
But it was connecting one, two,
Yes.
came off Conner, what happened in there? Cause I asked Ryan about that, he
Did
never
we
got back to
did-
me.
Did we loop that?
So the,
oh, he cut his legs off.
the owner of the manufactured home
Did his
part
own thing.
did his own.
Okay, so that wasn't us, he just did his own thing, okay, thanks.
And we kind of found out about it, I think, as the pavers were putting the mix down. So the city did send a somewhat, maybe cease and desist isn't the right
Yeah,
word, but
it's our street.
it was done out of sequence, and it somewhat precluded the city from contemplating other
Yeah.
utility improvements in the neighborhood. So while it was well-intentioned, it was not coordinated
Received.
with the city.
No.
It looks better and it rides better than it used to,
So yes, that is why you'll see that we're kind of matching into that as well as, and not replacing it, if you would.
Very good.
So jumping over to the intersection, so the last portion of the project, the intersection of Pearl Drive, Batzer Drive, and 304th Street. So this is just on the north side of the railroad. You can see that's just on the very south edge of the pink line there. This area was originally believed to be constructed by the St. Joseph Township. It was annexed into the city in 2019. We actually do not know the structural section of this area. We would propose to actually get some soil borings just so we could understand better of what is actually currently out there. We are proposing to do a full depth reclaim and pave in this area, so just like in Ellie Court, we just don't have to worry about the curb and gutter around this area. So showing, we're proposing to have 9.5 inches of aggregate base. Again, this would depend on the soil borings, whether if we'd be able to leave it all in place or take any out. And we're proposing to pave 2 lifts of 2 inches each, so a total of 4 inches of bituminous on top. Kind of some pictures of this area is also beat up pretty significantly just north of the tracks there. So this gets a lot of truck traffic going in and out. I don't know if you've noticed the structural section that we're proposing. This is actually the same structural section that was that is going to be still constructed on 20th Avenue also, just south of Minnesota Street. So it's a more robust section to be able to hold that truck traffic proposed for the intersection. There's kind of a close-up. You can see it's more kind of alligator cracked, and it's about ready to fall apart, so it doesn't have much life left in it there.
So is this a combination of both Knife River and Aztec? Or just
In
le-
front of those entrances, correct.
So would concrete be a better option?
It could be, one of the reasons we've proposed bituminous is we know that utilities, municipal utilities in that neighborhood is, been something the city has considered.
Yep.
And so, we are seeing, or we are treating this as more of a maintenance repair of the intersection versus a more comprehensive pavement alternative. So the city could consider a concrete alternative. My concern was if we had to get into that intersection again, if municipal utilities were in the future, that might be viewed upon negatively.
So where did the pipes go? 304th following Pearl Drive or?
One scenario would be following Pearl Drive.
Okay. I know the traffic that's increased in Knife River recently, and I know Aztec certainly beats up that intersection, so.
The other detail that we've talked about internally is the fact that the rail crossing itself will eventually have to be improved.
Yep.
If you were to consider concrete, for example, that
Oh,
likely
yeah.
would have been the time to look at a concrete crossing. So
Sure.
again, this is really more a stopgap measure, given the deterioration
Sure.
and what might be in the future for that subdivision.
And just so to Kevin's point, you know, where we might have 12 or 16 months of unusual traffic here on Callaway, that's consistent year-round, every day.
Right.
That, and so I would say the truck traffic here and the heavy use does impede or cause a deterioration at a higher level. That's why I suggested maybe concrete, but if, yeah, I know the utility plan, okay. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, thank you.
No, that's okay.
Fair question.
So, what?
I
You
said
have
it was a
another?
fair question,
Oh,
no.
okay.
So it's like 838,000 to do all this.
Yes.
As
And then
proposed.
how much of this would be assessed to residents or commercial property owners,
Approximately,
percentage-wise?
Right now, we're
Uh,
proposing at the city's maximum of 60%. If you recall, the special assessment policy
Okay.
is up to. So
Oh,
during the
look
course
at
of
that.
design and bidding, the city would typically engage a special benefit analysis
Yeah.
to determine what amount could ultimately be assessed. So for illustration purposes, we're showing 60% this
Okay.
evening.
60% to the resident.
60%, up to 60% to the
abutting
property owners.
property owners, yes. With excluding, the intersection of Pearl Drive, and 304th, we are now proposing to assess that one.
And that's primarily because it's in the intersection. It's in kind of, if you could say, the common area.
That information then.
So our next step, in fact, I think,
I got it, I can show it.
So while you're thinking about that, how do you assess to the mobile home park or that area? Is it
so,
to the owner?
so so Graceview is similar in
Right.
that, the manufactured
man-
home park is that, if you recall, I think this happened in our 2013 street improvements, if I remember correctly. The city had levied the assessment to the common area.
Yep.
And that was challenged, and, so we are illustrating the assessments based on the buildable lots or the individual lots and not the common area. So that's the direct answer to your question, Rick, is
Yep.
that we would
Okay.
assess the individual building units.
Very good, thank you.
So the next action for the council, when I asked you to park the conversation about Callaway Street, the next step would be to conduct the public improvement hearing. So at the public improvement hearing, the city would present the nature of the project, so similar presentation that I just shared with the council tonight. At that point, you would need to make a decision what part of the improvement you'd want to order in. So if the council knows that this evening, great, we can prepare for that for the public hearing, but at that point, at the public hearing, is when you would decide what would be the nature of the improvement. We don't talk, well, I should say, we present in a preliminary way the impact on special assessments. We don't have a construction contract, we don't have bid numbers, so we have to paint a picture in a preliminary way to the property owners, and that's where the 60% level is presented. So that number gets refined as the project moves forward in the process.
Historically, it kind of goes, just flips around.
Yeah, historically, you might be closer to, 25 to 40%, for
Right.
example, is what ultimately has been levied in the form of assessments, but
To the residents.
So where did we leave the Callaway discussion? Is it?
Well, we can leave it in. We can leave it in and then take it out next meeting. I mean, we
I
can take
just
it out, we
wanna-
can take it out now if you like.
No,
and then-
I just wanted to bring the issue forward,
Yeah.
and quite frankly, I just leave it to your best judgment as to whether or not you think we should do it now or wait.
so
Because
if,
you're the expert and you know what's gonna happen here.
if the concern is the optics of marring or disturbance, because there certainly is a possibility that could happen. And so if the concern is the optics of that, then I agree, then we can delay that 2 years without causing significant harm to the street. If a scratch or a rub isn't gonna create optics issues, then we can leave it in. But I appreciate a nice jet black street in front of a brand spanking new building looks nice, and so I understand that. So I guess that's a non-answer, Kevin. I could be persuaded either way. I think, if the council feels unified in that conversation, I think we can delay it.
Trust me,
if
how many
our
take?
road can handle
Finish
that,
that baby
let's
off,
Well,
and got your
delay
big
it.
And I think that's what I was saying
Yep.
is,
I'm gonna use that.
if it's not gonna cause more harm by delaying it,
Yep.
then I agree with you, why
And
not
and
delay
that's,
it?
you know, we would be concerned whether the overlay is on there or not. We don't want to see overloads come in on the streets. And so it's something that the police department and staff, it's something we monitor during a building project, that as long as a contractor isn't doing something unscrupulous, you know, then the road can be protected.
There's always a gouge, there's always some guy that comes down with his truck or whatever and gouges a road.
Mhm.
I mean, the farmers going up and down College Ave, you know, they drop their cultivator or something and boom.
Yep.
So it'd be nice if Callaway would just look nice when the community center's done.
Or
So
we could
after
just
it's
put
done,
those
some guy with a
Dings
cultivator
in
can
right
drive.
away from construction.
I mean, that's, you know,
What was that, Bob?
So, I mean,
What
like to
happens
put the
then?
dings in while we're doing construction.
Right, and then-
So, I mean, kinda cut to the chase, and
Yeah.
it's gonna be this way anyway, so you might as
I
well
don't care.
build it in.
Okay, let's take Callaway out.
I'm in agreement.
Consensus is take it
Consensus,
out?
we're all
Yeah,
good, take
I
Callaway out. We're still gonna do Fourth though, right?
We'll still do Fourth.
Okay.
So we'll prepare the exhibits, we'll
Okay.
modify the exhibits you've seen to have Callaway removed when we get to the public hearing.
Very good. Then,
Thank you.
So last step for the council, if there aren't any other questions, would be to consider the resolution scheduling the public improvement hearing.
I'll move to adopt resolution 2021-75.
I second it.
motion and second, adopting resolution 2021-75, report calling for hearing on public improvements. Any other questions or concerns? All those in favor signify by aye. Aye, opposed? Motion does carry. Thank you, gentlemen, very much. Wow, we're already to department reports, right? Oh, or do you want to do engineer report?
You want a long one now, or?
Yeah, let's go. You got 3 minutes.
Nope, that was it.
All right,
Thank you.
thanks, Randy. Yeah, 11 department reports. And Therese, you wanna start?
Yeah, so Lori and I attended the last fire board meeting along with Councilor Aloso on November 22nd. We discussed using ARPA dollars for use of the rescue van and taking the money that has been budgeted, planned for the rescue van and reallocating that for the grass rig. There is support for that. St. Joseph Township, they are open to using their ARPA dollars as well for that. And St. Wendell Township decided not to accept or apply for their ARPA dollars. So more to come on that. You guys did discuss that at your last work session, and we're in consensus that that could stay as an option.
Can we take St. Wendell's ARPA dollars?
Anybody who didn't accept their ARPA dollars
Put it
got
back in
put back in the pool to be
Okay.
redistributed, and that's where we got the extra 13,000.
Okay, idiots. Okay, thank you.
So I had a Zoom meeting with Sue Palmer with CSB. We typically try to do that monthly, just to provide an update. I think Mayor Schultz has shared this previously in his reports, but the search for one president is underway. So know that. So that would be one president for CSB and SJEO.
Who's Sue Palmer?
She, Rick, do you know her exact title?
Vice President.
Vice President of Finance.
Finance.
Yeah.
Okay.
She's the head bean counter.
Yeah, she is.
So who would we talk to at the college about the fact that the speakers on the soccer field point towards Graceview when they're doing their announcements and they play
Okay.
all that music and it just blasts into
Yeah.
Graceview?
Kelly,
Yeah.
the AD.
And
Oh.
it would be really,
Yeah.
it'd be better if the speakers were on the side of the, where the stands are in the building, going that way. How would that conversation start?
Yeah, like Kelly.
Otherwise, I was gonna get a hold of the athletic director and just visit with her about it, but I don't wanna.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually
ruffle
think it
any-
would be Ryan Gideon, and that's something that I could talk to Ryan Gideon. He's a
Okay.
facilities
But you could
manager.
mention it to her if you want.
Why don't
So-
why don't we talk about that, because that's
Okay,
one thing that I would like them to consider doing, is flip those around.
but then I can't hear the score then.
I don't care if you can't hear the score, then I don't have to hear the music.
Yes, you'll still hear the music, dude.
I don't hear it at all.
Me either.
I do.
I'll
Okay.
make that contact.
All right,
So I had shared at the last month when we presented monthly staff reports that we were planning public outreach for our community center. So that is still planned for January. So we're doing tentatively doing an open house on January 19th. Again, more to come on that. And then we'll do an online survey as well. So just to provide different opportunities for folks.
When is are we meeting again for the community center?
Yes, we are working on scheduling, so prior to that public open house for the public to provide input, I'm working with the community center committee to try to get something scheduled to meet with them, so they're a part of that
Do you have
process.
consensus on that email for, I think it was the 11th, 12th, or 13th?
I'll have to still finalize that. I didn't hear from all the folks.
Don't wanna miss it.
Mhm.
I'll take either or, whatever.
Kevin,
When does the next mayor newsletter go out?
January, I think. Caleb, January? Yeah.
So I just think we should, in terms of communicating to St. Joe residents about where we're at in this community center process, because we're really moving forward, we should use the newsletter, maybe our website, the news leaders newspaper, maybe get an article in there saying, hey, because we don't have a reporter here tonight, I just think we should really be letting the people of St. Joseph
Communication.
know what's going on,
We can do that, make that happen.
what we want to raise, how much it's going to cost, kind of like
An overview.
an
of what we've
overview of
done.
the whole project.
You wanna write it for me?
But we don't have any of that information.
We don't, we have, there's some missing pieces there,
Yeah,
that,
There's some
so,
missing pieces, but I think we,
Lots, a lot of missing pieces.
All right. so we can,
but there'll be,
we'll get it.
those will be filled in within a month.
And we certainly
Remember,
will,
it doesn't go to every resident.
The newsletter doesn't?
No,
Where does it go to?
well, apartment buildings don't get it, right? Or
that
individuals.
is-
But
that is-
that's just one of maybe
I'm just,
several ways to communicate.
yeah, absolutely. We have this discussion all the time, different ways, electronic, media,
Mhm.
newspaper, blah, 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 blah. So, okay.
Mhm. And even though we don't have all the answers, we can still provide a, update to
Sure.
Get the excitement. buzz.
residents
Yeah.
in the newsletter, newsleader, website, and so forth. This evening, as you know, I've been working on reviewing of that fundraising consultant, and you reviewed that this evening. We held our construction manager interviews last week. Ryan and I met with, along with Shift Tech, met with the City of St. Cloud, their IT department, on the fiber extension. You probably saw them out here. They are extending, well, they have actually fiber in the community, but they're extending that. So we wanted to meet with them to see if maybe there's an opportunity for us to connect. So nothing right now, that was just to have that initial meeting to see if there could be an opportunity, and as we learn more, I will share it with the council.
Where'd the new extension go to? Just,
I-94.
really?
Mhm.
Okay,
Yeah, it's coming off from I-94.
okay. Thank you.
Mayor Schultz and I met with Senator Howe and Representative Damuth last week. I will let him provide that update more under his report, but essentially it was an opportunity for us to provide an update on city happenings, and he'll share more. And as far as staff, Rhonda Jewell, she's planning Snowfest, which will be held January 28th and 29th, and also working on programming for spring and summer events, and then yoga classes are continuing as well. And then upcoming meetings,
Where are those
EDA,
going?
those are, sometimes there's attendance and sometimes there's not.
Okay.
EDA meeting tomorrow, and then our next council meeting on the 3rd of January. That's all I have. If you have any questions for me, I can answer those.
We're not having a work session this month, are we?
We have not this month. We'll have it in January.
Next one,
Okay.
okay.
Very good.
January 23rd.
Thank you. Let's see, who's next on the list? Community development.
Yes,
Nate?
I'll just hit on a couple highlights here. So from the report, just an update on the deed grant that we had submitted for JR Mobile. We did get notification on Friday that we did receive that. So I am gonna be meeting with the developer tomorrow and talking about next steps. So I'll keep the council up to date on that project as needed. Also, just
Who is the developer?
Yeah, who's the developer?
Because it's in litigation, if I understand.
yeah, so we're discussing some of that tomorrow at the meeting. So I'll know more information soon on that.
Well, provided litigation is or is not settled, does that determines whether we accept the grant or not, correct?
Yeah.
Potentially, yeah. So there's an alternative situation that the developer is exploring. So we're gonna talk about that more tomorrow at the meeting and see where that goes. So if there's any modifications that we need, we'll bring that forth to the council with like a new resolution or whatnot. So I'll keep everyone up to speed as best I can on that.
Okay.
Good question though. Also just various enforcement of zoning violations. We've had some of those recently, so enforcement of that. Also just research on different grant opportunities. We talked about East Park, looking at different grant options for that. I'll probably have a couple different options and I'll work with Rhonda and go over some of those for East Park. I had my 1-year performance review, so I've been here for a year already. It's kind of hard to believe that time goes by quick. So
During COVID.
last thing I have is I'll just be out the office next week, returning first week of January. So any questions?
Anybody? Very good, thanks, Nate. Lori, finance?
Since my iPad died, I'll just go through a couple things that are happening. This is actually the very busy time for finance. We have year end, so we'll be wrapping up payrolls, getting W-2s out, getting 1099s processed. Utility billing, will be sending out the utility bills in January, and that will be, we also have the calculation of the winter average for residents for the sprinkling, so that kind of adds to that activity as well. So overall, and we'll be getting ready for the audit. The auditors are already reaching out for me, trying to set dates. It's usually around first, second week in March that we have our annual audit. So a lot to do for us to get ready for that. Also, obviously, we wrapped up the budget, got that approved. So there's still some reports and things that I have to file with the state and the county to get that all certified. So we'll have that finished here this week and ready to go. And then the last thing that I had is I just wanted to mention that we're working with CLC Partners on their assessment payment for the industrial park. And so they did provide a check last week to come up for the, to get current for the 2021 assessment. So it's something that we look at every year when it comes to December, where they're at with property sales and the bond payments that are on that project. So other than that, vacations, I was out last week, Vicky's out this week, so it's kind of hit and miss of who's around, but again, big thing is year end, that's what we got going on. No other meetings that I have scheduled. Anybody has questions?
Lori, I noticed in your report about shut-off notices going out. How often throughout the year do we send notices out? Is it quarterly or we do it?
Every other month, so
Every other month, okay.
the utility bills are due on the even months on the 15th of the month.
Okay.
And so we calculate penalties on the 16th after we close out all the receipts that we have.
Okay.
We post everything and then we'll calculate the penalties and send out notices.
Okay.
And then shut-offs are usually a couple weeks later. We give some time for people to,
My only
Okay.
thought there was like sending a shut-off notice like a week before Christmas, just seems
just
kind
kinda how
of
the-
crass, so if we could like take that every other month and maybe not include the end of December, but not a big deal, I just thought I'd ask.
Very good, thanks. Thanks, Lori. Public Works, Ryan?
Good evening, Mayor, Council, and staff. We've been receiving a considerable amount of color water complaints due to the fact that we did not flush this fall with the water ban. We didn't get a chance to flush any of the hydrants. We have been tackling those with going into the homes of the residents or businesses. We'll take out their water meter, we'll flush their line until, it clears up and put their water meter back in. So far, we have not had another callback by doing that, so, we'll probably get a little bit busier with that as we get closer to spring until the thaw comes up and we can flush our hydrants again, but it's something we'll deal with. Been working with Randy, and Bill with the 2022 street projects. We did get some new straw bales in for the, sledding hill down at Memorial Park. We are trying to make ice out at the ice rink. I have had some residents reach out to us about that. I really wish we could get them ice by Christmas. I just don't know if that's gonna work. Weather just hasn't worked with us, up until this point. Hopefully we get to start putting down some water this week. Other than that, been giving some public works tours to some of our staff members, so that's kind of exciting. Showing them around and how the water treatment plant works and stuff like that. Staff is kind of business as normal. Upcoming meetings, staff will continue to work with their wastewater and water continuing education. By Park Board on the 27th of December, Council again on the 3rd, and Safety with the League of Cities on the 5th of Jan. Pending any questions?
Yep. Snow removal, you know it's coming. Got a lot of neighbors, a lot of complaints.
Yep.
I mean, I know, and we have obviously got an email from someone in 6th and 7th. I know you've kind of went over it a little bit, but I think some of the people they feel like they're complaining, and then they're seeing you. I know that's not the case, but I guess some of the questions they had is like, well, how many plows do we even have in the city? How many people do we have doing it when they do? I know you discussed one day you usually do the downtown streets, and then the next day you do the side streets. I think you got a lot of people that are driving over the side streets, and now obviously with the rain, now it creates ice. Now, I know personally on our block, that's where the complaints came, is we had people slip and fall, and why aren't they clearing them?
Yeah, so I have fielded a considerable amount of snow complaints this year. I don't know what the difference is from last year to this year. I want to start out by saying that 2 snowfalls ago, we did receive 1.5 inches of snowfall. I made the call not to go out and plow because we were coming up with the 50-degree weather 2 days later. I decided to save the budget money. The snow melted away. Life was good. Other than that snowfall, we have been out every time plowing the city. We have been out last week Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and we started going through the city again today. We're about halfway through it. So in the last 5 days, we have plowed this city 5 times.
Right, so when you say plow the city, and I think that's just what they're, I wanna give them the why. I think you kinda told me certain days you do certain areas, so some of the questions that came is, well, how many plows do we have? How many people are doing it? You
Yep.
know?
I have 2 front-end loaders and 5 plow trucks.
Okay,
Ryan, what's the resolution? When are we supposed to, or when has city council given you authority?
So we're supposed to go out with 2 inches or more.
So right now, the snowfalls have been less than 2 inches.
They have.
And that's a
However-
resolution the city council passed about 3 or 4 years ago.
Yes.
Right.
2 inches is a lot of snow to leave on the ground.
Yep.
But that is the current resolution, yes.
and I think a lot of the complaints you're getting is cause, we did have that snowfall,
Yep,
it did melt, then it rained,
yep,
then it froze,
yep,
then it snowed.
yep. And I scraped twice
Yeah,
during
and I
this.
think that's where most of them are coming, I just
Yep.
wanna be able to give some of the why to the neighbors at least.
Yep, but some of the other confusing stuff is I've been hit up numerous times, between the weekend and today that, my area didn't get plowed, my street did not get plowed. We went curb to curb through the entire city.
Yep,
The problem is everybody beats down the snow.
Yep.
By the time it stops snowing and we get out there, you have a compaction, right?
Right.
My plows don't plow the compaction, but now we put product down, i.e. salt. And then when
Creates
the
it.
sun comes out, it activates the salt, it loosens the compaction, and now you get a bunch of slush on the road again.
Yeah, that's a
And that's
good
what they're
why.
seeing.
Yeah, and that's a good why. That's all we needed, I think, at least for my neighborhood, to be able to explain some of that to the neighbors.
Ryan, that's good science.
Right,
Compaction, salt, slush, plow, salt, compaction, stuff, okay. I get it.
But once it turns to slush, plow it,
Well, then, they,
otherwise it becomes a rut.
Yeah,
well,
we are. To answer
Okay.
your question, Bob, but.
Yeah, I know.
But to go back to the last council meeting, when you talk about you want a balanced budget, I'm gonna blow away my budget this year in snow. We have plowed 6 times already this year. I plowed 4 times last year.
We haven't even
I've
had that
already
much
ordered
snow.
another
We
set of
really
cutting
haven't had,
edges.
And we're only in
We
December.
haven't had any snow.
you know, last year we had significant snow by this time. This time we've only had 2 inches or less.
Yeah.
So, I mean, some of these things,
The-
like,
the little
really,
bit-
literally.
The
yeah,
little bit of snow is actually harder on the equipment
Yep.
than a lot of snow.
Absolutely.
The snow is actually a lubricant.
I don't know, I think that's just, it's a good enough why to be
Yeah.
able to explain it. Not saying you're not doing it, you know, but I just think, like anybody, if you're not here and you don't understand the why, well, yeah, you plowed, but then, like you said, it melts and
Yeah.
it's slush, well, why the heck didn't they plow our roads?
Right.
Do we have, you know, there's some houses that have the pins? Or
Yep.
what are they called? I don't even know what they're called.
Plow markers.
Is that a pain in the tushy for
Um,
you?
you know, not
I mean,
really.
do we have cause doesn't that stop the,
So they put the plow markers out so we don't get into their yards
Yes,
and grass
I
lines,
get that,
which I
yeah.
completely respect.
yeah,
The problem with the plow markers now, when you go around the plow markers, I'm gonna stay a good 12 feet, or excuse me, not 12 feet, 12 inches away from them.
right,
So now I'm not really plowing curb to curb.
right.
But I do respect the fact
Oh,
that
I do
they're
too.
trying to protect their sod and
That's what I was just asking, cause because the more it snows, if we do, then the road's gonna get smaller.
Yeah.
So then we can't complain.
Right. How many guys do you have again that do it?
I have 7 full-time 7 full-time employees and 1 winter seasonal, so I have a total of 8.
Okay. Thanks.
You also got a volunteer out there.
Yep,
Yeah, I do.
give them a call.
Yeah. His lawnmower looks a little tough though this winter.
Question, any other questions?
Yeah, pending any questions?
This year's been a hot topic. I don't know why either.
Yeah,
I know
it's
we get a
been-
lot, every winter, I get
Yeah.
a series of complaints about snow plowing. It seems to settle down after the first month. I'm hoping it will
Like I
again.
said, I think it was just because of that snow,
Yeah.
rain, nothing, snow, ice.
Yeah, other than that one.
Minnesota.
Other than
You
that,
know, I mean-
one snowfall with the 50-degree weather that came in behind it, we have not done anything different.
And I think that's, you know, they saw that, it's like, well, they didn't even plow that
Yeah.
first one. They don't think that, oh, it all melted, so there was a decision there to save money. They just see, they didn't plow it that one time, and then it snowed again, and now they're not plowing it again.
Right.
So I think that's probably where you're seeing a lot of it.
Yeah, this year's been up more than that. Item 12, mayor report. So I'll go over what we had, met with Lisa and Jeff with. And we talked about really the construction that's going on downtown St. Joe, the additions to Bad Habits, some of the changes that we've seen positive. We know Trobix is coming. And then we talked about legislation that will impact us or potentially impact us. We're going to put a bonding bill for East Park, and we did 2 years ago, we didn't last year, or 3 years and 2 years ago. So we have the language is out there, we just have to put it together, and we know that's coming. In addition, we're gonna ask Jeff to put forth an exemption for sales tax at community center, make us tax exempt for those, community center purchases. And then local control, the legislation that's going before the Senate, I think, initially to one size fits all from a zoning and building perspective. We've asked him for language on that. There's another piece of legislation he wanted to work with us on, you remember?
Yeah, so the B3.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
with the
B3.
community center, yeah, we're required to do B3 and,
It's gotta be on site, and he's gonna ask either for, well, he put together that it shouldn't have to be on site. I think that failed, so now he's gonna ask for an exemption that doesn't have to be on site, that the credits, the renewable credits can be purchased from off-site as long as they're renewable credits from another source. So he's gonna put that legislation before us for the community center. Else we'll have to put solar panels or something else, and a big windmill on the roof or something like that. But it was really productive. I mean, we give them a good outlook of staff changes, like, some of the turnover we've had in, police department, some of the turnover we had internally, some of the issues we've had with the fire department and turnover there as well. Some of the issues we have in the city from a growth and construction perspective. And, they're very, again, Lisa and Jeff are really very reachable from my perspective. Anytime I call them, they answer right away, or they call back that same day, so. All very good session. Questions? Was there something else I was supposed to remind you? That was it, wasn't it? Yeah, I think so. Oh, the CDL, the fire department and Public Works had asked, there's a new CDL learning requirement that came up in the fire relief meeting. And I contacted APO, who got a hold of Minnesota Department of Transportation. They sent back the document. It's only for new trainers. In other words, fire departments, Public Works will still have the exemption that's been in place forever. If you're getting a new CDL license in February of 2022, then this new training by federal training and Minnesota Department of Transportation kicks in. So I don't know if we're gonna have any new people coming on board.
Did they do that just because with supply chain and everybody wanting to get a new CDL, I'm assuming?
You know, it's a federal requirement.
Yeah, it's a federal requirement, it's not state. It's,
Well,
we
yeah,
do,
I
we do
figured
have it. I
federal,
still
too.
owe you an email to send back the cost and stuff, or the spreadsheet, so I'll get that to you, I promise. Any questions? Staff? All right. Item 13.
Move to adjourn?
Second. Motion and second to adjourn. All those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you all very much.
So, next meeting, we're doing construction.
The first meeting in January.